My grandfather's disturbing family tradition left my 12-year-old brother hospitalized, so I quietly collected proof and disappeared on my 18th birthday. Now, a year later, my cousin says the younger boys are finally starting to resist too, and the family is panicking as their dark legacy crumbles. Within my family, all the boys observed a singular decree: cause your cousin to bleed or endure a week of hunger. You see, each Saturday, my male cousins, aged 10 to 18, would convene in my grandfather's garage. Two youngsters would step into the chalk-drawn ring. Only the one who drew blood from his adversary was permitted to eat for the subsequent week. They called it forging kinship through hardship. My grandfather initiated this custom after his return from Vietnam. I witnessed tender American lads perish, weeping for their mothers, he would recount, his unseeing eyes sweeping over our faces. No descendant of mine shall be frail. My uncles upheld these regulations with immense pride. Uncle Marco maintained a photographic collection of his combat triumphs, pages displaying his cousins' bloodied countenances from the 1980s. So, upon reaching my 10th year, I spent my birthday for the first time in the fighting garage, surrounded by relatives tending to old injuries. I attempted to convince myself it wouldn't be so terrible, that I could simply compel myself to disengage and pretend it wasn't occurring. Oh, how mistaken I was. It turned out it wasn't merely about drawing blood. You battled until crimson fluid stained the concrete floor. No medical assistance was provided until the victor had consumed their meal. Winners feasted like royalty while the defeated sat at the same table, observing. Siblings contended with siblings. Fathers placed wagers. The initial bout is always significant, Uncle Tony declared, propelling me towards the circle. My adversary, my cousin Luis, also 10, also petrified. The men formed a human barrier around us, chanting, "Blood unites kin," repeatedly. Luis and I circled each other, neither wishing to deliver the first strike. "Hit him," my father shrieked. So I did. I struck him until his nasal bone fractured and scarlet droplets spattered the ground. That evening, I consumed chicken and rice while Luis sat opposite me with an empty plate and a cloth pressed to his visage. The ensuing months fractured something within all of us. My 12-year-old brother, Anthony, almost lost his left eye battling our cousin David. Roberto, once the most gentle child, learned to fight unfairly, gouging eyes and tearing flesh from ears. "Gotta eat," he would utter afterwards, expelling blood. By my 15th engagement, I had only prevailed 7 times. Insufficient to escape the hollow sensation of starvation, yet enough to comprehend the perverse gratification of witnessing others go without. I loathed the person I was becoming, and our community was so confined that over half the educators at my institution were somehow connected to us. Thus, they ensured no inquiries were made. I understood that if I didn't discover a resolution swiftly, my existence would be over. But I desired the predicament to vanish on its own. And one day it did. We were preparing for the spring theatrical production when the drama instructor presented us with stage blood packets, minuscule sacs that ruptured upon impact, generating convincing blood effects. That was my moment of revelation. I pilfered a few daily to test my concept. So, by the time Saturday arrived, I palmed a packet before entering the chalk circle. When my cousin Marco seized me in a headlock, I slapped the packet against my nose until artificial blood streamed down my countenance. "Blood on the ground," Uncle Tony bellowed. Marco triumphed. I went hungry, and for the first time, I wasn't resentful about it. Instead, I concentrated on acquiring more packets. I instructed my younger cousins in the technique during restroom breaks. We devised a system, choreographed movements that appeared brutal, but inflicted no harm. A feigned stumble here, a packet slap there. For 3 glorious months, we outwitted our fathers. We alternated victories based on who most needed sustenance. My younger brother was smiling once more. We were performers, not combatants. Everything proceeded smoothly until my grandfather observed my cousin's unblemished face after a fierce confrontation. "Where are the contusions?" he inquired. "How did they recover so swiftly?" The room fell silent, and I feigned intense fascination with the peas on my plate. We believed he would forget about it, but he did not. And the following Saturday, everything transformed. Body searches, metallic detectors, uncles positioned as arbiters inside the circle. When they discovered the blood packets taped inside Domingo's waistband, my grandfather made an example of him. 3 18-year-olds against 1 14-year-old. Genuine blood, authentic shrieks. Domingo did not walk properly for weeks. "You are next," my father promised me that night. "Fight like a man, or I will demonstrate what true kinship signifies." I uttered not a word before retrieving my phone. I have been recording these skirmishes for 8 months. Every beating, every enforced starvation, It is all uploaded to a cloud repository that Child Protective Services and the authorities already have access to. Every utterance I made was a fabrication, but it was inconsequential. All that mattered was that they ceased the aggression once and for all. "We are finished bleeding for you," Louise declared. Vincent was already on a call. "Police, we require assistance at 1847 Oakwood Drive. Child mistreatment in progress." The garage erupted into pandemonium. Grandfather's hands trembled as he reached for Vincent's phone, but my cousin snatched it away, retreating towards the exit. The distant wail of sirens caused everyone to freeze. "You are bluffing, boy," Grandfather stated. His unseeing eye fixed upon me, while his functional eye darted between the windows. His hands quivered as he motioned for everyone to remain calm, but I perceived the apprehension creeping into his weather-beaten face. My father lunged towards me, but Louise and Vincent stepped between us. Louise still had dried blood beneath his fingernails from our simulated fight earlier. "This concludes tonight, Uncle," he asserted, his voice steady despite everything. I compelled myself to maintain the falsehood, even as my voice wavered. "Check your phones at midnight. Everything goes live. 8 months of evidence." My heart pounded against my ribs, but I kept my chin elevated, meeting Grandfather's gaze. A small gasp emanated from the corner. Anthony had discovered our 8-year-old cousin, Miguel, huddled behind the tool cabinet, holding his father's phone aloft, recording everything. The crimson light blinked like an accusation. Uncle Marco seized the phone from Miguel's tiny hands, his thick fingers fumbling with the display as he erased the video. But Miguel whispered something that caused Marco's face to lose all color. "I already sent it to Mother." The sirens intensified, then abruptly veered away towards another thoroughfare. Vincent's panic call had provided the incorrect address. The room collectively exhaled, but their relief was too apparent, too incriminating. "Family meeting now inside the residence," Grandfather commanded, his authority reasserting itself. He gestured at Roberto. "Check the streets. Ensure they are truly gone. No one departs until we resolve this." We entered the main house like captives. The mothers emerged from the kitchen, confusion shifting to horror as they observed the blood on their son's attire. They had been aware of the skirmishes, feigned ignorance, but the starvation component was novel to some of them. My mother's face crumpled when she clearly saw my bruised cheek for the first time under the bright kitchen illumination. "I thought it was just roughhousing," she stated, but her voice faltered on the fabrication she had been telling herself for years. Grandfather stood at the head of the dining table, the same table where victors ate while the defeated starved. "Anyone who exits that door tonight is dead to this family. No funds, no assistance, nothing." 3 mothers were already gathering their offspring, coats half-donned, car keys jingling. My Aunt Catherine held her twin boys close, both displaying fresh contusions from tonight's interrupted confrontation. Uncle Tony moved to obstruct the main entrance, his considerable mass filling the frame. "No one is going anywhere until we ascertain what evidence actually exists. This could ruin all of us." During the stalemate, Luis caught my gaze and displayed his phone screen. He had been recording audio for the past hour. The battery indicator showed 2%. My stomach plummeted. Our sole genuine evidence was expiring in his grasp. Then the lights extinguished. Roberto had reached the circuit breaker. In the sudden gloom, furniture crashed and adults shouted. Someone's elbow struck my ribs as bodies collided in the confusion. "The bathroom window," Vincent hissed in my ear. 5 of us scrambled through the small aperture while our fathers cursed and stumbled in the dark. We hit the ground running, dispersing without discussion. The younger boys headed for my friend Jake's residence, 3 blocks distant. Vincent, Luis, and I sprinted towards the 24-hour McDonald's on Main Street. Luis's house was nearer, so we attempted there first. His mother answered the door in her dressing gown, her face etched with worry. Behind her, I could discern Luis's father's outline in the corridor. "Your grandfather already telephoned," she stated, avoiding our eyes. "Depart from here immediately." The door slammed in our faces. My phone vibrated incessantly. Messages inundated it. Threats from uncles, pleas from mothers inquiring about our safety, demands from fathers desiring our whereabouts. Each communication caused my hands to tremble more violently. At McDonald's, we had barely placed our order when the manager approached our booth. "Your grandfather called, said, you boys are runaways. I need to contact the authorities." The security camera's crimson light blinked above us like Miguel's phone had. We abandoned our untouched food and fled again. Desperate, I telephoned Miss Rodriguez, my drama instructor. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice thick with slumber. When I explained, she consented to meet us at the school. Something in her tone seemed amiss, but I was too desperate to question it. She was awaiting us in the parking area when we arrived, but she was not alone. Principal Morrison stood beside her, arms folded. "Your family is terribly concerned," Miss Rodriguez stated, avoiding my gaze. She had called them first. Of course, she had. Half the school personnel were related to us somehow. We bolted through the gymnasium, but Anthony twisted his ankle, leaping the chain-link barrier. His cry of anguish echoed across the empty basketball court. Now we had to move more slowly, supporting him between us. Dawn arrived with nowhere secure to go. My bank card was declined at 3 different ATMs. Grandfather had already made his calls. Ranks closed overnight. Luis's phone finally died, taking our only recording with it. The local morning news played on a television in a shop window. "Police are searching for several runaway adolescents from a concerned immigrant family," the anchor stated. I recognized her. She was my grandmother's hairdresser's daughter. "Perhaps if we apologize," Vincent suggested, exhaustion causing him to sway on his feet. Domingo's younger brother, Sean, had joined us during the night. He pulled up his shirt, revealing fresh bruises across his ribs. "This is what transpired after you departed. Father gave me a lecture about familial loyalty. I made a resolution. I will go to the police alone. You individuals find somewhere to conceal yourselves." The police station smelled of burnt coffee and disillusionment. I had barely commenced explaining when I observed Uncle Marco through the glass partition, filing a missing persons report at the adjacent desk. The officer behind the glass partition glanced between Uncle Marco and me, her expression shifting from boredom to perplexity. She held up a finger, signaling me to wait, then buzzed me through to a small interview room that reeked of stale cigarettes and cleansing solution. 20 minutes elapsed before Detective Chun entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a notepad. He placed 1 cup in front of me, then settled into the metallic chair across the table. His wedding ring clinked against the table as he opened his notepad. "Your uncle states you have been experiencing some difficulties at home," he began, his voice neutral. "Care to share your perspective?" I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, gathering fortitude. The words spilled out. The garage, the altercations, the blood, the hunger. Detective Chen's pen moved across the page, but his expression grew increasingly skeptical as I spoke. When I concluded, he set down his pen and leaned back. "So, you are telling me your grandfather makes you boys box? Like a boxing club?" "Not boxing," I corrected, frustration mounting. "Fighting until someone bleeds. Children go hungry if they lose." He massaged his temple, then summoned his partner, Officer Petroian, whose nameplate caught the fluorescent light. The instant Petroian heard my narrative, his face hardened into something I recognized all too well. "Listen, kid," Petroian stated, crossing his arms. "These old country families possess different customs. My own grandfather used to make us wrestle. It is not mistreatment, it is tradition. You cannot simply label it abuse because you dislike it." My objections fell on deaf ears. Within an hour, they released me into Uncle Marco's custody. Grandfather chaired the local VFW and had lent half the town money, so favors were effortless. The journey home stretched interminably. Uncle Marco's knuckles white on the steering wheel as he made assurances about grandfather's clemency if I would just retract. We passed Luis's house. His family's vehicle was gone, the driveway empty. Back home, grandfather had transformed into the concerned patriarch. He sat in his leather armchair, surrounded by my aunts and uncles, playing the worried elder to perfection. "Boys fight," he informed the room, shaking his head sadly. "It is natural. This one has imagination issues. Too much time with those theater individuals." The next morning, a social worker arrived, a weary-looking woman named Ms. Patel, who interviewed me with my entire family present. Grandfather sat beside me, his hand heavy on my shoulder while my parents flanked me on the other side. Every question she posed was filtered through the weight of their presence. "Has anyone ever harmed you?" she inquired, her pen poised over her clipboard. Grandfather's fingers tightened imperceptibly on my shoulder. My mother's foot tapped against mine beneath the table. Once, twice, a caution. "No," I heard myself utter. "Just normal family matters." Ms. Patel departed with promises to follow up, but we all knew she would not. Budget cuts. Child Protective Services closed 200 files that month. Ours was another statistic. The system was overwhelmed, and we appeared to be a close-knit family dealing with a rebellious adolescent. That night, I lay awake strategizing. The photo album, Uncle Marco's collection of trophies, still existed somewhere. While the household slept, I crept to grandfather's study and lifted his car keys from the hook by the door. My hands quivered like his hat in the garage, trembling with the gravity of what I was about to undertake. His study smelled of pipe tobacco and aged leather. I searched systematically, checking drawers, shelves, the wardrobe. Finally, behind a row of accounting ledgers, I discovered it. The album's leather cover was worn smooth from handling. I opened it eagerly, prepared to photograph the evidence with an old digital camera I had found. But the pages displayed only typical family photographs, birthday celebrations, graduations, holiday meals. Every violent image had been meticulously replaced, as if decades of brutality had never transpired. Seeking something? My mother stood in the doorway, her robe tied snugly around her slender frame. In the moonlight, I could perceive how much weight she had recently shed, her cheekbones sharp beneath papery skin. Mother, I require those photographs, the authentic ones. She closed the door behind her, moving to sit on the ottoman near me. I am aware of the hunger, she stated quietly. I have known all along. But what alternative do I possess? Depart with nothing. Your father lost his employment 3 months ago. Your grandfather covers our mortgage. Your sister's school tuition. Everything. The burden of her words settled over me like a shroud. So, we just continue bleeding. You comply until you are 18, she stated, avoiding my gaze. Then you leave. That is what survivors do. Saturday approached with the inevitability of a burial. Grandfather announced a special exhibition match for my return, promising the family would witness me properly disciplined. The other escaped cousins had gradually returned home throughout the week, each with similar accounts. No money, nowhere to go. Parents who prioritized security over their children's well-being. Vincent returned with his arm in a sling, claiming a skateboarding mishap. Luis came back silent, his recording device mysteriously absent. Even brave little Sean was back, moving cautiously to avoid aggravating his ribs. Friday evening, grandfather visited my room. He sat on my desk chair, appearing older than I had ever seen him, but no less formidable. Your father attempted this at your age, he stated conversationally. Believed he could alter things. Now look, he depends on me for everything. Through my doorway, I could discern my father hovering in the hall, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I am offering you a proposition, grandfather continued. Fight once more appropriately. Demonstrate to the family that you comprehend your position. Then you can withdraw. I will even fund your college education. But this defiance concludes tomorrow. His countenance darkened. Then observe what transpires to Vincent tomorrow, and it will be your culpability. Saturday arrived with storm clouds gathering overhead. They confined me to my room during fight preparations. But I could hear everything through the floor. The scuffing of feet on concrete. The men's voices placing wagers. The nervous laughter of boys attempting to appear courageous. Then Vincent's scream commenced, distinct from the usual sounds of combat. These were pure agony. I hurled myself against the door, ramming my shoulder into it until the handle fractured. Rushing downstairs, I discovered blood pooling beneath the garage door. Inside was pandemonium. Vincent lay unconscious on the concrete, blood flowing from a head wound. The adults stood frozen, genuinely astonished. Grandfather had permitted the fight to escalate too far, utilizing Vincent to make his point. My mother finally snapped. Enough, she shrieked, pushing past Uncle Tony. Call 911 immediately. This concludes tonight. The room instantly divided. Some wives rushed to Vincent's side, while others attempted to silence my mother. And Catherine was already dialing, tears streaming down her face. The ambulance arrived in minutes, paramedics loading Vincent onto a stretcher. Grandfather informed them about a skateboarding accident, his voice steady and convincing. But the EMT, a young woman with sharp eyes, noted the inconsistencies in the injury pattern. She made notations on her tablet, exchanging glances with her partner. 40 minutes later, after the sirens and the frantic journey to the hospital, I cornered a nurse named Patricia and recounted everything. She listened attentively, documenting every word, but her expression grew sympathetic rather than hopeful. Without the victim's cooperation, it is merely hearsay, she explained gently. If Vincent corroborates your grandfather's story, he did. When Vincent awoke, his parents hovering nearby, he looked directly at the physician and stated he had fallen while skateboarding, but he squeezed my hand when no one was observing. An apology in his grip. Patricia showed me something that made my blood run cold. The hospital's computer system contained records of cousin after cousin being admitted over the years. Fractured noses, cracked ribs, concussions, all individually explained away, but collectively they depicted a clear pattern. I comprehend what this is, Patricia stated quietly. But I require a family member over 18 to make an official report. Someone willing to endure. In the hospital waiting room, my mother wavered. Perhaps now, she began, but my father interrupted her with a glance, reminding her of our sisters' futures, their reliance on grandfather's money. I returned home to discover my possessions piled on the front lawn. Grandfather stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You are no longer welcome in this dwelling, he announced. But legally, I cannot expel a minor. You will sleep in the garage. The garage still reeked of blood and apprehension. The chalk circle remained, stained darker in places. I fashioned a bed from old moving blankets in the corner, attempting not to dwell on all the brutality these walls had witnessed. While cleaning, I found a tooth wedged between two floorboards. Monday morning, the school counselor summoned me. Mrs. Vance sat behind her desk, hands folded, concern etched across her face. Your grandfather called. He is worried about your mental well-being. These accusations you have been making. Mandatory therapy sessions commenced that week. Dr. Brennan's office was expensively furnished, all leather and dark wood. He listened to my narrative with professional interest, making notes that I knew would portray me as delusional. Your grandfather is financing these sessions, he disclosed during our third meeting. He desires what is best for you. Sometimes trauma can cause us to misremember events, create false narratives. I realized then what was transpiring. Every word I uttered was being documented as proof of my instability. Grandfather was constructing a case that I was mentally unwell, ensuring no one would credit me. The subsequent Saturday, I attempted to record the fights from my concealed position in the garage rafters. Roberto caught me, crushing my phone beneath his boot, while the other cousins observed. None of them assisted. They had learned the cost of defiance. Without a phone, I began handwriting everything in a journal, documenting dates, injuries, participants. I hid it in my locker at school, believing it was secure. But the janitor discovered it during routine cleaning and, following protocol, turned it over to the principal. Principal Morrison called a family meeting about the unsettling fantasies in my journal. Grandfather sat in the office, shaking his head sadly as the principal expressed apprehension about my violent imagination and false recollections. Even Jake's parents grew concerned when grandfather sent them Dr. Brennan's preliminary assessment. Perhaps you do require assistance, Jake's mother suggested gently when I attempted to stay at their house. These delusions appear serious. Desperate, I approached the local newspaper. The editor, Mr. Garrison, listened courteously as I presented my story. He took notes, posed questions, but I could discern the skepticism in his eyes. This is a grave accusation, he stated finally. We would require proof, corroboration. Without that, it is merely hearsay, and frankly, accusing a respected community elder of something this heinous. I returned home to discover grandfather had been busy. The few remaining fight trophies were gone, leaving empty spaces on shelves and walls. The family was erasing its violent history in real time, removing any trace of evidence. Luis found me that night, sitting alone in the garage. He appeared exhausted, defeated. I never had recordings, he admitted. I lied to support your bluff. I thought it would succeed. Thought they would cease. I am sorry. The reality of our predicament became clear. Grandfather's objective was not merely about fighting. It was about dominance. Complete control until boys reached 18 and departed voluntarily. Too broken to ever challenge the family hierarchy again. I had to endure 2 more years. I commenced documenting everything in hidden locations. Utilizing library computers to compose accounts, storing notes in a locker at the bus station. Every piece of evidence meticulously concealed where family could not reach. To maintain my cover and avoid worse retribution, I was compelled to attend fights as an observer. I sat on an inverted bucket in the corner, watching cousins bloody each other while I took mental notes. The younger boys had begun shunning me, grandfather's propaganda taking root in fresh minds. One small triumph occurred when I persuaded 2 mothers to schedule their sons' activities during fight nights. Piano lessons and soccer practice became shields. But grandfather noticed the pattern within weeks and began scheduling fights randomly. Sunday mornings, Wednesday evenings, whenever it suited him. My father finally spoke to me privately one evening, catching me alone in the garage. He appeared older than his years, worn down by decades of subservience. I am saving money, he whispered, glancing nervously at the door. When you turn 18, I will assist you in leaving. Just survive until then. But surviving meant watching 10-year-olds enter the circle. It meant seeing boys I had attempted to protect learn to embrace aggression. Some cousins now practiced fighting voluntarily, fully indoctrinated into the system. My carefully hidden documentation was discovered when my aunt cleaned the library during a volunteer shift. She destroyed everything to safeguard the family. She later informed me her own son was approaching fight age, and she could not risk the tradition ending. Alliances shifted constantly as younger boys reached 10. Some embraced the custom, viewing it as a path to grandfather's approval. Others approached me secretly, pleading for assistance I could not provide. Roberto astonished everyone when he broke. The toughest combatant in our generation, he pulled me aside one night, exhaustion etched across his scarred face. I am weary of harming cousins, he admitted. But I am too deeply involved to quit now. Together, we established a new evidence cache, utilizing Roberto's inside knowledge to document everything. We concealed it in an abandoned structure near the railroad tracks, a place where I sometimes slept to escape the garage's oppressive atmosphere. 3 mothers instituted family dinners on fight nights, providing their sons with excuses to miss. Grandfather retaliated by moving fights to Sunday mornings, adapting his custom to maintain control. The younger cousin's transformation hurt most. Boys who once played together now practiced combat maneuvers voluntarily, believing grandfather's rhetoric about strength and kinship. The indoctrination was complete for many of them. Then came a breakthrough. Miguel, the 8-year-old who had filmed that initial night, had continued recording secretly. He showed me clear video of grandfather himself striking Domingo during a demonstration, blood spattering, as he showed the older boys proper technique. But the video included me in the frame, observing without intervening. My complicity was evident, even if coerced. My mother discovered my evidence cache while following me one evening. She confronted me in the abandoned building, tears streaming down her gaunt face. "You will destroy us all for your principles," she demanded. "I have been skipping meals to save money. Your sisters require their education, and you wish to demolish it all." I made a decision then. Survival over justice. I would await until 18 to act, gathering evidence for the future rather than the present. The next fight night, grandfather compelled me to officiate a match between 2 10-year-olds, fresh-faced boys who had never fought before. I stood in the circle, counting blood drops on concrete, fully complicit in the system I had attempted to dismantle. Grandfather smiled from his chair, knowing he had triumphed in this round. Vincent had recovered, but was altered. The head injury left him with periodic headaches. But something else had shifted too. He pulled me aside one night, whispering urgently, "I am recording everything now. Truly recording for when we are older. When we can genuinely take action." A network formed quietly, cousins documenting in secret, planning for a future reckoning. The resistance had gone underground, more cautious, but not vanquished. As my 18th birthday approached, grandfather made an announcement that sent chills through my veins. "Our wayward son will receive one final lesson," he declared at dinner. "On his birthday, he fights. Then he can depart with my blessing or remain with my respect." The implications were clear. One last degradation, one final breaking, and then I would be free to leave if I could still walk. The cousins whispered about who my opponent would be. Some thought Roberto, despite our recent alliance. Others suspected grandfather would import someone from another branch of the family, someone without our shared history. But I knew better. I had observed how grandfather operated, how he twisted allegiance into armaments. It would be Luis. My first opponent would be my last. The circle closing with poetic cruelty. And Luis, now fully indoctrinated, would fight to truly injure me. The boy who had once stood beside me against our fathers had become grandfather's perfect combatant. The evidence we had collected resided in various hidden locations around town. Digital files on library computers, physical documents in bus station lockers, videos on old phones concealed in abandoned buildings. A scattered archive of aggression awaiting the opportune moment. But that moment felt impossibly distant as I sat in the garage listening to the latest fight through the walls. The wet sound of impact. The cheers of men reliving their own brutal youths. The silence of mothers who had chosen security over their son's safety. 2 more months until my birthday. 2 more months of observing, documenting, enduring. 2 more months of being complicit in the very system I had attempted to dismantle. The chalk circle waited, patient and ravenous, prepared for one last feeding. Sunday morning arrived with grandfather's new schedule. I watched from the garage doorway as mothers hurried their sons past, claiming urgent church obligations. 3 families managed to avoid the morning fight, but grandfather's eyes tracked each absence with cold calculation. Roberto cornered me behind the tool shed afterwards. His knuckles were split from demonstrating holds on the younger boys. "Your birthday is in 6 weeks, he stated, checking over his shoulder. "Luis has been training extra. Grandfather has been coaching him personally." The following week, grandfather instituted surprise inspections. He would appear at piano lessons, soccer practices, even school events, ensuring his grandsons were not hiding behind fabricated excuses. Mrs. Chin's piano recital was canceled when grandfather appeared, demanding her students return for family obligations. I spent nights at the abandoned building, adding to our evidence cache. Roberto brought photographs of medical records he had stolen from his mother's filing cabinet, years of emergency room visits, all meticulously documented. We wrapped everything in plastic, concealing it beneath rotting floorboards. 2 cousins approached me separately that week. 12-year-old Marcus, whose fight debut was approaching, pleaded for the blood packet trick. I had to explain why it would no longer be effective. Watching hope drain from his face. 8-year-old Carlos just wanted to know if the hunger would eventually cease hurting. I lied and said yes. Grandfather announced a new regulation at the next fight. Winners would now eat in front of the entire extended family, not merely their opponents. He desired the mothers to witness their starving sons to comprehend the cost of defiance. My Aunt Maria lasted 10 minutes before breaking down, pushing her own plate towards her defeated son. Grandfather prohibited her from the next 3 dinners. Vincent's headaches worsened during a particularly brutal confrontation between two 14-year-olds. He collapsed in the garage, clutching his skull. The family physician, grandfather's golf companion, prescribed pain medication and suggested less stress. No one mentioned the obvious cause. I discovered grandfather had been visiting my school counselor weekly, providing updates on my mental state. Mrs. Vance now looked at me with pity rather than concern, fully convinced I was delusional. My teachers received copies of Dr. Brennan's reports, portraying me as a troubled adolescent with violent fantasies. Roberto's breaking point arrived 3 weeks before my birthday. Forced to fight his younger brother, he refused to deliver the final blow that would draw blood. Both boys went hungry. That night, Roberto packed a bag and vanished. His parents filed a missing person report, but I knew he had made it to his girlfriend's family in Nevada. One less ally, but I was pleased he had escaped. The younger cousin's transformation accelerated. They formed practice groups, meeting after school to refine their techniques. 10-year-old Diego boasted about the moves grandfather taught him privately. The custom was evolving, becoming self-sustaining, even without the older generation's enforcement. These boys would perpetuate the aggression. My mother's weight loss became impossible to disregard. She had given her portions to my sister so frequently that her clothes hung loosely on her frame. When I confronted her, she simply stated, 2 more weeks, then you are free and things will become easier. But we both knew grandfather would never permit things to become easier. Miguel's secret recordings multiplied. The 8-year-old had become our most invaluable asset, his age rendering him invisible to the adults. He showed me footage of grandfather instructing the older boys on psychological warfare, how to shatter an opponent's spirit before the fight even commenced. But every video included other cousins' faces, implicating them in the system. Grandfather scheduled a family gathering for the week before my birthday. Cousins from other states would attend, including some who had aged out of the fighting years ago. The true purpose was clear. Witnesses for my final humiliation. He desired every branch of the family to witness me broken. I attempted one last time with the authorities. A different police station, a different detective. Detective Williams, a woman with compassionate eyes who listened to my entire narrative. She took notes, posed follow-up questions, even seemed to believe me. Then she made a call to check my background and discovered Dr. Brennan's reports. The interview concluded with pamphlets for mental health resources. Vincent developed a new tactic. During fights, he would position himself to accidentally intervene when things escalated too far. A stumbled step here, a knocked-over water bottle there, minor disruptions that prevented serious injuries. Grandfather noticed, but could not prove intentionality. 3 weeks before my birthday, Luis began his final preparations. I observed him in the garage, practicing combinations on the heavy bag grandfather had installed. His technique was flawless, brutal. The frightened 10-year-old I had first fought had been replaced by a true believer. He caught me observing once, and simply nodded like an executioner acknowledging his condemned. My father's savings plan encountered a setback. Grandfather, suspicious of everyone now, had tightened control over the family finances. Bank statements arrived at his house first. Any unusual withdrawals were questioned. My father managed to conceal $300 in cash, nowhere near enough for escape. The family reunion arrived with cousins I had not seen in years. Men in their 20s and 30s, bearing old scars from their fighting days. They shared accounts of their glory years, comparing techniques, laughing about the hunger. Not one of them spoke against the custom. They had been broken and rebuilt in grandfather's image. Grandfather made a spectacle of announcing my birthday fight in front of 40 relatives. He declared it would be held at sunset when warriors proved themselves. Luis stood beside him, already wearing his fighting attire. The message was clear. This was not merely about tradition anymore. It was about crushing defiance completely. That night, I met with Vincent and the few cousins still secretly resisting. We possessed evidence, but no means to utilize it without jeopardizing our family's financial stability. Miguel's videos, Roberto's photographs, my documentation, all futile against grandfather's economic stranglehold. We were ensnared between justice and survival. My 18th birthday dawned gray and humid. Extended family filled the house, their excitement palpable. Uncles who had moved away returned to witness the spectacle. Cousins filmed everything on their phones, creating their own documentation of the tradition's perpetuation. The garage had been adorned with banners reading "Strength through struggle," and brotherhood bonds. Someone had repainted the chalk circle, making it wider to accommodate the anticipated violence. Folding chairs lined the walls for the spectators. This was not merely a fight. It was a ritual. Luis warmed up in the corner, his focus absolute. Grandfather had given him new gloves, lighter ones that would cut more easily. Every detail had been planned to ensure maximum harm. Uncle Tony tested the garage door, ensuring it would lock properly. No escapes this time. I made one last check of our evidence cache at the abandoned building. Everything remained hidden, awaiting someday. Perhaps when the younger cousins matured, when grandfather's hold loosened with age, or perhaps it would decay there forever, a testament to failed resistance. The extended family gathered as sunset approached. Mothers held their younger children close, whispering explanations about family custom. The men formed their usual circle, but larger now, 3 rows deep. Grandfather sat in a special chair, elevated to see over the crowd. His unseeing eye caught the overhead light as he smiled. Tonight we remind everyone what transpires to those who challenge family, Grandfather announced. His voice carried absolute authority. Luis has trained diligently. He comprehends honor. He will impart a vital lesson. They locked the garage door from the inside. No one would depart until blood stained the concrete. I stood in the circle, feeling the weight of 40 relatives' expectations. Luis entered from the opposite side, muscles coiled, prepared to obliterate what remained of our childhood camaraderie. The fight commenced without ceremony. Luis attacked immediately. Combinations grandfather had drilled into him for weeks. I dodged, blocked, refused to engage. The crowd grew restless. Someone shouted for blood. Others demanded action. Luis's frustration built with each missed strike. He prepared for war, but found only evasion. His attacks grew wilder, more desperate. Grandfather's training could not account for an opponent who would not retaliate. The meticulous choreography collapsed into disarray. Then Vincent acted during a particularly vicious rush from Luis. Vincent accidentally knocked over the water table. The crash momentarily distracted everyone. Luis slipped on the wet concrete, falling hard. His elbow fractured upon impact. Blood flowed freely. The garage erupted in confusion. Technically, blood had stained the concrete, but from a fall, not a strike. Grandfather stood, his face purple with fury. But the regulations were the regulations. The fight was over. Luis lay on the concrete, staring at his bleeding elbow in shock. I helped him up, whispering an apology he did not acknowledge. The crowd dispersed uncertainly, deprived of their spectacle. Grandfather's perfect ceremony had devolved into a farce. At dinner, I ate while Luis sat with an empty plate, his arm bandaged. The irony was lost on no one. Grandfather's chosen combatant, defeated by clumsiness. The meal passed in tense silence. Tradition fulfilled, but somehow broken. That night, Grandfather summoned me to his study. He sat behind his desk, appearing every one of his 78 years. For the first time, his hands trembled without fear to conceal it. "You prevailed without winning," he stated finally. "Depart. Take nothing. Never return."